Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the mercy-giving. Let me begin by conveying to you Islamic greeting. May peace of Allah be on all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Today we'll talk about a very important topic, and that relates with slightly legal issues. And I know legal issues are not always easy for people to understand. We'll try to take up this topic in a very simple manner. You find in media, in magazines, quite often a statement that if anywhere an Islamic state came, you will have people walking around with only one hand. Quite often you hear people saying Islam is so harsh and rough that if someone has gone out with some lady, then they catch him and just stone him to death. And in modern society, where dating, going out with women is a common practice, how would Islam work in such a kind of society? You also hear people saying that Islamic punishments are very old, based on some tribal customs, yet they think Islam can work in modern times. All these observations and comments are made and repeatedly made, which create an image of Islam as if it is going to impose a kind of legal system in which Muslims and non-Muslims will be oppressed. Let's see and be very fair without any apologies. I believe Islam is such an open book. Islam provides so frank answers, you don't have to be apologetic at all in justifying things. First, we'll try to understand why Islam talks about punishments. The fact of the matter is, these punishments in the Quran are such a small portion of teachings. If you go and try to find out, there will be hardly less than 1% of the whole teachings of the Quran. The Quranic emphasis is essentially on social justice, human rights, honor, dignity, liberty of the individual. And all that is done in an ethical framework. For example, the Quran warns sanctity of life of every individual, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. And therefore it says, if you violate one single human life, not just Muslim, but one single human life, then you have violated the life of whole of humanity. And if you give life to one single person, Muslim or non-Muslim, you have given life to whole of humanity. With that principle, if someone kills an individual and says, see how cleverly, how messily I killed the person, give me a prize, Islam says, wait a minute. We don't give you a prize. You have killed a human being, deprived a whole family of an individual, deprived society of a very product person, deprived a nation of someone who was valuable for them. Therefore, will not let you go so easily by saying you killed him masterly with a skill. But we want to find out why you killed him. So it goes through a long procedure of legal investigation, trying to find out witnesses, evidences about the person who was killed and the one who is the murderer, and the whole procedure leads ultimately to a point where, when murder is proven with intent, with purpose, then this person must get punishment. So future lives are saved, families are saved, society is saved, countries are saved, humanity is saved. Therefore, it takes the approach, once the accused is given all possible margin of doubt and right to defend, and it's proven that murder was done just for his own sake, not for something justified, then it treats that murder against humanity. To save humanity, it tells to have capital punishment. Same applies to other situations. If honor of a person is at stake, if someone is raped, Islam does not think rape is something enjoyable, something that relates with individual ethics, but it takes rape as something which is extremely against humanity, against society. And therefore, a person, when he is given by Islam a very positive and healthy approach in life, you want to live family life, you want to enjoy sex, nothing wrong in that, but enjoy sex by ethical means. Therefore, have a family, live with your wife, enjoy the way you like, but in ethical manner. You have no right whatsoever to dishonor someone else. If you do that, then go back to biblical times where Old Testament and New Testament all said that when immorality is committed, immorality must be faced with severe punishment. Immorality is not something to be proud of. Even people who may not follow any religion, as human beings, can never endorse immorality. They can never agree that women folks can always be subjected to any kind of terror. Islam wants to save mankind, women as well as men, from a kind of behavior which is least human and essentially animal. Therefore, Islam goes and tells us that first provide people with all possible facilities. Therefore, the Quran says, وَأَنْكِحُ الْأَيَامَ, marry those of you who are bachelors. It makes it obligatory that you create a society where marriage is made manageable. Therefore, no need at all to demand high dowry, no need at all to look for people who are rich and only then you marry, but acceptable standard themselves. One of the major problems today is AIDS, and the reason is we have made sexual promiscuity more easy than living an ethical and moral life. If there are difficulties in getting married, if there is no possibility of living a peaceful, moral, ethical life for a young person, then he falls in trap of immorality. No medicine can cure AIDS except the Islamic approach of family life, living ethically. I was saying that if positive aspects of Islam are not observed, I think we have been discussing mainly, is it correct to say that Islamic law has harsh punishments? Islamic law creates a feeling of terror in people by putting them to severe punishment. And let's see for next few minutes some of the examples that are quite often quoted about theft, for example. Let's see how Islam works on that. But before I think we talk about theft, let's try to understand Islamic law is not a matter of punishments alone. It's essentially a matter of giving justice to people, security and protection to them. And in that environment of protection and security, if someone intrudes, then Islam feels unhappy. It wants to get a society where honor, property, and life of people is fully protected. But if someone wants to go against it, if someone wants to destroy that balance, if someone wants to create reign of terror by his or her irregular activity, then Islam becomes very much careful. And that's why, to keep this peace and security, it has given a system of punishments which deter anyone from doing something wrong. The beauty of Islamic law is it acts as deterrence and not as a terror. Let's see, taking an example about theft. It is said, the Quran tells us very clearly, thief, whether male or female, legally, when found guilty, should face the consequence of amputation of hand. So the Quran says, "As-sariqu was-sariqatu faqtu aydiyahuma," which means whether male or female thief, you amputate hand of either one. Now what does that mean? Does it mean if in any place Islamic State is established and someone go to a shop and lifts a ring from there, which is perhaps a diamond ring, the shopkeeper may close the door, have a body search, and when finds that ring in the possession of a person, should cut the hand of thief? Is that what it means? Or it means when a person has entered a shop looking on a variety of rings, and with this, for some reason, slips a ring out of that collection in his pocket and is found guilty later on, then shopkeeper can do nothing. Law can do nothing except taking him to a law court where the judge should ask why you took that ring. And when this person proves that he was dying out of hunger for 3 days and the state did nothing for him, the shopkeeper, who was a millionaire, and his neighbor was looking at him and having no mercy. In such a situation, when this person stole that ring, no law or Sharia can take his hand away. On the other hand, the hands of those who kept him hungry, downtrodden, suppressed, will be touched, and they will be asked to compensate for his loss. Suppose, for example, this person is a very wealthy person and a millionaire and has a habit of shoplifting, and he comes to a shop with a very nice appearance, with a Mercedes Benz he has driven and parked in front of the car of the shop, and then out of the collection of rings takes the ring away, and the shopkeeper detects and takes him to the task. Should we say, because he is millionaire and by a trick he was able to do it, we forgive him? Or law should come forward and say, sir, you had no excuse whatsoever. You had everything. You could even buy this ring and 10 more rings with your money. Instead of purchasing that, you went for theft. Is that honorable, justified? Does it provide a model to others to follow? Do you want others to imitate you by coming to shops and using the same trick, fooling the shopkeeper and getting away with a diamond ring? In such situations, law must be severe. Therefore, Islamic law first makes an effort to provide justice, then makes an effort to deter the commitment of crime. But when crime is committed, it goes for a very rigorous legal process in which we must verify that theft was really committed. If the shopkeeper wanted to trap a person and left diamond rings in front of him and went away for a break and came back after 20 minutes, then judge must ask him, you were an intelligent person and you knew very well, if you leave someone for 20 minutes with a variety of rings, no hidden camera, no one to watch, then it means you are trapping the person, attracting the person, enticing the person. Is that correct way of shopping? Correct way of running a shop? That means no single Islamic punishment can go by the literal statement of the Quran. For it has to be a proper investigation, a proper procedure, and first and foremost, a search in finding out what was the cause. If the cause was initially an injustice done to person, then law cannot act. On the other hand, this person who was denied his right has every human right to be compensated, to be supported, and not punished at all. Which means what appears quite strong, quite harsh, is essentially a matter of deterrence and not a matter of running after people to cut their hands or to stone them. Let me say a few words about the famous understanding among people about stoning to death. So far as we understand Sharia, the Quran tells us that if a young person who is not married is found guilty after proper investigation and witnesses called, he has committed something wrong, immoral, then the punishment, the Quran tells us, is 100 lashes. But if a person is married and has all possibilities of satisfying himself with his wife, and still this person goes out and commits immorality, then punishment has to be more strong. That's why Islamic law, Sunnah tells us, it has to be stoning to death. Yet, when we go to Sunnah, we find that Prophet, peace be upon him, was always trying to find out all possible details in order to allow margin of doubt to the accused. And quite often we find the Prophet asking a person, does anyone know what you have done? Which means when a moral crime becomes a public hazard, then law can no more have patience. But law can have patience so long as a crime remains confined to one single person, and that person realizes wrong and evil which he has done and feels compelled to repent, to express his sorrow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and never do it again. If that is done, then there is no punishment at all. But if the person becomes so shameless to go ahead and in front of public commit something wrong, then I think it's not only Islamic law, it's common sense which tells us we should not encourage that obscenity and should make such acts of obscenity a message for others to know that if you become that obscene, to commit a sexual offense in front of people publicly, then you have no right whatsoever to live in that society. Society can only survive when piety, ethicality, morality are maintained. And that means respect for women, respect for married life, respect for norms and values of society. And someone who violates the norm and values of society is essentially doing a crime against humanity. And such crimes should never be endorsed. That's why we find in the whole history of Islam, you can find perhaps incidents which can be counted on fingers. In 15 centuries, if you have 10 or 12 such incidences, then I think these are worth to keep mankind pure, families secure, life peaceful, and honor of people protected. If we pay price by 10 or 15 persons to keep 15 centuries free of immorality, I think that is not a price at all. That's what we should do. In other words, if these 10 to 15 persons in 15 centuries paid the price and the end result was a society where people go for ethical moral conduct, then it is deterrent and not a kind of normal behavior that anyone, anywhere accused of immorality will face that consequence. All such matters have to go through a rigorous prosecution, a rigorous investigation, and trying to verify, because no one can be accused for nothing, and no one can go clean after having committed a social crime, a moral crime, a public crime, a crime against humanity. Let me recount what I have said in past few minutes. The whole myth that Islamic law is blind, harsh, and very much severe can be completely dissolved if you go to Quran and Sunnah and try to find out what do they say about such crime and punishment. There we find the concern of Islamic law is not punishment, but a healthy society. A society where you have no poverty, no hunger, no obscenity, no immorality. And that is done by positive persuasion, positively fulfilling needs of people, providing them with their rights and obligations. And when that is observed, it automatically cuts down on such deviance and violence. Nevertheless, when deviance and violence is done against a society, society must come forward to correct it. And to correct it, it must have a strong deterrence, not just a polite and mild caution. There has to be a strong deterrence. To take our common example, if traffic violations are not important, if we say someone was just driving for enjoyment at 120 kilometers an hour, and let him do that, it means you are exposing hundreds of lives to danger. And if one single person who goes beyond speed limit gets a ticket and has to pay twice the fine, then 10,000 people will never do that. Law must act as deterrent, must also act as penalizing authority in cases. And therefore, what Islam does is common sense, is logic, is benefit of humanity, and not a matter of harshness at all. Anyhow, you cannot claim Islamic law is only law of punishment. Islamic law is a wide spectrum body where there is more emphasis on positive and healthy living than a few punishments. Ayatul Ahkam in the Quran are counted and a small portion of the whole teaching. And among those, the punishments are much more smaller. Therefore, it is very simple to understand that Islamic law is a positive system, is not a matter of harsh punishments. On the other hand, it's a matter of upliftment of morality and providing legal support, moral support, social support to those who stand against injustice and exploitation. But anyone who exploits and creates violence must face the consequences, and therefore Islamic law takes a very serious approach towards such people and suggests certain punishments which are deterrent and not a matter of just looking after people who are just committing a small violence and paying a heavy price. It's very briefly what I want to share with you in this discussion, and I hope this discussion will open many more questions and will provide us opportunity to come back again and have more discussions on television. I thank all of you who have been viewers, who have shown interest in this topic, and I hope that we will be able to come up with similar discussions in order to create better understanding, environment of mutuality, environment in which those confusions are eradicated, which become a bottleneck in our human relations. When we know Islamic law is not a matter of punishments, but a matter of human rights, security, dignity and honor of people, then we will change our approach towards Muslims, towards Islam. And that will open up environment of peace and mutuality, which is one objective of Islam. Islam wants to create a society where people live with different faith and culture with respect and honor. Therefore, life and honor of a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, an Islamic law is as much valuable as that of a Muslim. Their honor, their property, and their life should also be protected. And the only way to protect their life and honor is to have a system in which people know when they go against social norms, they will not be left unchecked. This is human, and logical, and that's why Islamic law insists on its positive teachings as well as on some punishments which are there in the Quran and Sunnah, and anyone is invited to go into Quran and Sunnah and find out the truth for oneself. May Allah guide us to truth, and may Allah let truth prevail in all societies. And with Allah's blessing and blessing to all of you, I take leave from you, and thank you very much.